attention is the next global economy. If I could offer kind of any foresight into what marketing in the next 10 years is going to look like, attention is king. The advice I would give is be a fan of culture, embrace creativity, embrace the diversity of the audience on TikTok. There is a big difference between attention and reach and engagement impressions. Attention means always being front of mind for a consumer. It means fulfilling a purpose and a utility, and it means showing up in the moments that matter. The one thing that's always been true for me is with every decision I make to get closer to something that I love.
Thank you, everyone. So this is Peggy, LBS MBA 2022. On behalf of the Marketing and the Strategy Club, I want to thank you for attending today's speaker session. It's our great pleasure to have James Rothwell, Head of TikTok Marketing, Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and John Ratcliffe, who will be our moderator.
James, so excited to have you here. Such a remarkable career you've had, working at some of the most noteworthy companies of our time, from Google to Netflix, and of course, TikTok. And as I think about those three companies, all three of them have had so much impact on the cultural landscape of our world today. And it must have just been such a fascinating career. I thought perhaps we could kick off, if you could just perhaps tell us a little bit about your role in TikTok today and what you would say success looks like within that role.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Peggy, for the kind introduction. It's great to be here. I've been at TikTok for coming up to a year and a half. I'm based in London. And I think really our goal as a marketing organization is to cement the role of TikTok in culture. Very few brands have the opportunity to shape local or global culture. And we have been on a meteoric rise over the last 3 years. We announced a couple of weeks ago that we've crossed 1 billion users. We're one of only 4 organizations of all time to do that. So the reality is that while we're a 3-year-old company, we need to act as a 20-year-old brand because our brand needs to accelerate to catch up with the growth of our organization. So we spend a lot of time as a team thinking about how we can establish a utility and a purpose for our product, how we can define ourselves, not in the eyes of consumers, but in the lives of consumers, to really articulate the role that we're playing in culture and in society. And within our team, as Peggy mentioned, we have a creative group, a media group, a research group, a product marketing group, a social group. And our goal is to bring all of those teams together to really build a consistent and loved brand, which is understood in each of our priority markets. So it's been a wild adventure over the last 18 months or so. I can tell you that I've personally never had so much fun working on a brand. I think there is a beautiful elasticity to TikTok. We're a brand that can sponsor the Euros. We're a brand that can run a campaign about learning. And we're a brand where sea shanties and old kind of naval songs can blow up and become a cultural sensation. So I think, that gives us real flex creatively. So, happy to deep dive into all of the above, but, to answer your question, John, our focus right now is on building a loved, trusted brand that can help us kind of guide the company into the next chapter of its growth.
Sounds fascinating, James. Certainly as a user myself, if I was to reflect on how I use TikTok, it just blows my mind on a daily basis how well TikTok gets to know you and then how great the content is which it serves up to you. Sort of if I was to think about the things I'm interested in, it's sort of entrepreneurship and it's marketing and it's surfing and it's parenting. And it's just so bizarre how all of these things can all be served up in almost sort of a daily highlights reel. And certainly as a user, it just blows my mind every day how well the platform understands me as a user. I guess a really interesting question I'd love to hear your view on, James, is just in terms of having been there for over a year, what inspires you most looking at TikTok today?
Well, I think inevitably the superpower of TikTok is our community. You're absolutely right that the product means different things to different people. Whenever we have someone joining our team, as Peggy mentioned, we're growing. we always, as an icebreaker, say, well, show me your For You feeds. You know, sometimes I think opening the app and looking at the content that you're being served is a great way of getting to know someone. And sometimes it understands you better than you understand yourself. And, you know, really the entire product experience, and to a large extent, our brand is built around the incredible creator community that have made it. And the real power of TikTok is that it's built around the content graph, not the social graph. If you think about traditionally how you would interact with social entertainment platforms, in some regards, your view on the world is based on who you know. And that's incredibly intimate. It feels familiar, but can also be limiting. And what TikTok does incredibly well is say, well, tell me about what you're passionate about. Tell me what you're into. Help us kind of send you on a voyage of discovery to explore new content. And that sends you down so many fascinating rabbit holes and kind of passages of discovery. And that's really the power of our platform. I think TikTok really rewards creativity. It really, we've given creators around the world a megaphone to tell their story, to entertain. And the sole purpose of our product is to connect consumers with the content that they love. And again, bringing that back up to our brands, it just makes us very, very elastic, because my experience of TikTok is going to be very different to yours, is going to be very different to Peggy's. And I think that, you know, that will provide real longevity for us as a brand, because you may cycle through communities and social needs and friendship groups, but your fundamental need to be entertained, to learn, to discover new passions and interests is long, long lasting. And I think that that's the special sauce that makes our product so sticky and makes the algorithm so powerful, because we have the world's culture told through a billion lenses, which means there will always be incredible content to discover.
It's incredible, that number of 1 billion. And I was looking, and every month since the start of last year until today, TikTok has been the most downloaded app in the world. And I get, once you're on it, there's this incredible sort of experience of learning and seeing how well it gets to know you. I'd be fascinated to hear your view on how the growth is happening so fast. Obviously, people who are signing up aren't aware of how great the experience is. It'd be great to hear your view on what's driving that growth.
I think there are a handful of brands in the world that truly proliferates culture and become bigger than their individual product experience. And of course, that, you know, the magic of TikTok is within the app. But actually, if you think about that, the first way that you interact with TikTok, it may be someone taking a piece of content and resharing it through a messaging app or another social product. It could be that you're a football fan and you see TikTok showing up in the Euros, or that you love music and you see TikTok showing up in an Ed Sheeran concert. The elasticity of our brands means that, you know, we are able to meet consumers where they are. And inevitably, the product experience and the content is more powerful than any brand's marketing. You know, we're very proud of the work that we do. We think we've got a very strong story to tell. But it's highly likely that you met TikTok within a social channel that you use, or an interest that you have, or through word of mouth. And the multiplier effect of word of mouth, when you have so much content and a user base of 1 billion users, is extraordinary. So as I said, I think we have been able to earn a kind of a share of attention in culture. We're stretching our brand and our products into so many different areas. And inevitably, the ultimate marketing tool is 1 billion people that use our products and love our products, which is why we're so excited about the next couple of years, because we're going to continue investing in incredible content, a brilliant product experience, and showing up in those global moments that truly matter to people. And we're just getting started. So, you know, it has been a meteoric rise over the last 2 years in particular. We're incredibly proud of our growth, but equally we know that so much of that is down to our community and the people creating content on our product. So we owe a great kind of debt of gratitude to the people that have made TikTok.
That makes so much sense, James. And, you know, it's so interesting because I think, you know, you spoke about attention there. And as I look at the world today, there's such a war for attention. There's just so many different channels all trying to reach people. I remember there was this article from Forbes saying that, the average person is getting between 4,000 and 10,000 marketing messages a day. And they're all fighting for this very limited amount of attention. And, it's fascinating how well TikTok has won in that space. When I look at the usage numbers in the UK and the US, it's sort of getting close to an hour every day. And sort of just starting to sort of bypass platforms like YouTube. And it's just fascinating how significantly TikTok has won that war for attention. I guess sort of the question, and we've spoken a bit about it, but what do you think is the core sort of thing which is keeping people on the platform for as long as an hour every day?
I mean, to kind of touch on your question, you're absolutely right. And I'm sure that this is a major topic of conversation within LBS as well. Attention is the next global economy. If I could offer kind of any foresight into what marketing in the next 10 years is going to look like, attention is king. And there is a big, big difference between attention and reach and engagement impressions. Attention means always being front of mind for a consumer. It means fulfilling a purpose and a utility. And it means showing up in the moments that matter. So for us, the stickiness of our product comes from our ability to entertain, to inspire, to educate, to help people escape. People come to TikTok, whether it's for 15 seconds or for an hour, and leave feeling more nourished. They leave feeling happier. They leave feeling inspired. We often talk about TikTok being the last sunny corner of the internet. And it's just incredible that we've created a destination that you can come for any amount of time and just leave feeling a bit happier. And I think that that's such an incredible role that we play. But attention is being divided now more than ever, as you say. The sheer volume of messages and content that a consumer interacts with in a day means that eventually people will become numb to advertising, if not already. So the way that we approach our brand campaigns, the way that we approach our partnerships is to make them entertaining in their own right. I've used the Euros a few times as an example already, but I hope that, for anyone on this call based in Europe that saw our brand advertising, our live streams, our activations, I hope that each one of those touch points was a form of entertainment and put a smile on your face and was surprising and delightful. And that's how we capture hearts and minds and win attention. And it's not enough just to have attention within your own product. You have to build attention in the rest of people's days. And, again, if you look at something like the Euros, 4 hours of, more than 2 billion people's day for 6 weeks, their attention was focused towards football. And you're either in that conversation or you're not. And it's the same with music. It's the same with television and film. It's the same with gaming. So, we own attention when someone is in our product, and we're very proud of the experience we provide, but we also want to embed our brand in the cultural moments, the conversations, the events that matter, so that we have share of attention across our focus verticals. And I think that's something that we've been doing incredibly well over the last 6 to 12 months.
It's so exciting, James. It feels like the whole world of advertising is shifting so significantly. If you went back 15 years ago, you could absolutely put a TV campaign on TV and know you're going to get a certain amount of audience. You can almost do the maths behind it. Whereas today, we have so many options every day. And I think, if there's an ad which is popping up, you get to choose. Do I want to watch that ad on TV, or do I want to do something else, like maybe go to TikTok? And it's such a fascinating thing, this idea of the shift from like push advertising to now it feels like you really have to earn the attention of your audience. You have to earn it. You can't like trick people into paying attention anymore. And I think the old world of marketing and advertising was all about sort of like, I'm just going to interrupt and get my message out there for a few seconds and hope someone pays attention to it. And it feels like such a seismic shift to having to earn attention. And it's just great to hear that as an organization, you're focusing on that side of actually earning attention in your own communications as well, sort of living your message which you're communicating to the world.
Yeah, and if I can just pick up on that, earning attention before you buy it is an underlying first principle of marketing. Irrespective of media budgets and how much you eventually spend, if your creative, your brand touch point, your activation isn't talkable initially, it just doesn't matter. And I think the distinction that you make between push marketing and pull marketing is so critical. you can buy reach, you cannot buy attention. So, I mean, there are 180 people on this call. When was the last time someone sent you an ad? My guess would be once in the last 6 months. That's not attention. When was the last time someone sent you a piece of content that you love? Probably every day. When was the last time you interacted with a brand at an event that was meaningful for you? Probably every week. That is attention. So we want to make sure that all of the work that we do is truly entertaining in its own right and pulls people towards it. It should be talkable, entertaining, surprising, and delightful. So we really hold that bar up to the work that we do as a marketing team. Because if we are trying to shape and define the entertainment landscape, the work that we do as a group has to be as entertaining as our product experience. Otherwise, that we're not being additive and we're actually diluting the power of our brand. So, you know, yes, of course, we run major TV campaigns, but realistically, when we run a live concert with Ed Sheeran, or we activate at Wembley for the Euros, or you know, we show up in other gaming, entertainment, sports moments, that is how you build attention and how you allow consumers to tell your story on your behalf. So that distinction between push versus pull, I think, is brilliant. And I think that's really the recipe to earning attention before you buy it.
That's so interesting, because one of the trends I've seen is the large sort of multinational advertisers in the world have implemented rules within their organization to make videos shorter in social media environments. You know, you're only allowed a video to be 3 seconds or 6 seconds long. And it's so interesting because those rules are obviously in place there to ensure that when you do steal someone's attention, they remember your brand, and the brand has to be in the first second, and it has to be on the thumbnail, etc. And I think what's so fascinating is that that's playing so meaningfully into the sort of world of like, we're kind of going to continue the old way of creating content where we're going to push into people's attention. And it feels like a complete rethink is required. And it's just been so fascinating to watch from our position. And then you look at TikTok as an environment, and it's almost impossible to play like that with those old rules within TikTok. It just really doesn't seem to work.
Completely agree. There is an underlying insight in what you just described. If you're trying to squeeze in a brand touch point in the first second of a skippable ad, or you're trying to move from 60 to 30 to 6 seconds, the underlying assumption there is that someone doesn't want to see it.
Yeah.
So to me, that's kind of protecting the last bastion of an old form of advertising. Why can't brands create 60-minute pieces of content? If it's entertaining and it's relevant to an audience, it will pull people towards it. And you know, we have a brilliant philosophy with all of our clients and partners on TikTok. Don't make ads, make TikToks. Build content and stories which feel native to our product. Work with our incredible creator community. Embrace the playfulness and the trends of the platform. Because an ad will stand out like a sore thumb, but brilliant content creation in TikToks will allow consumers to interact with you as a fan, as a consumer, as a part of that experience. And it's just such a deeper, more meaningful interaction. So it's such a simple line, don't make ads, make TikToks. But I think it kind of says everything you need to know about the direction that the industry is moving.
It's very interesting. I've seen that line and it sort of resonates. But it is hard though, you know, as I think about being a brand today, because when you say make a TikTok, you're kind of saying make something which is interesting enough that people are going to choose to watch it versus everything else in the world today. That's kind of the underlying message. And I think as a brand, that's so challenging. I remember back in sort of like early 2000s, I was working in an advertising agency, and we often used to get that brief, which was like, let's make a viral ad. And it was always such a terrifying brief because is it something which is possible to do intentionally? And I guess it feels like make a TikTok feels harder as a brief. And I think it must be hard for brands. I was wondering if there's some examples of brands which spring to mind who have really embraced this type of philosophy and done it really well.
I think you're seeing a wave of fashion, luxury, and beauty brands that are doing an incredible job on TikTok. L'Oreal, Gucci, Burberry, Balenciaga. I think they're kind of the role that they play in culture, the access that they have to content, the relationship they have with creators is perfectly built for TikTok. JD Sports in the UK is doing fantastic work. It's really kind of embraced the sports and music culture of TikTok. But some of the brands that are incredibly successful spot an opportunity and kind of embed themselves into an existing trends. Not everything needs to be true origination. Who would have thought that one of the biggest trends of last year on TikTok would have involved cranberry juice? You just can't predict, you know, a guy leaving work on his skateboard, listening to Fleetwood Mac, drinking a bottle of ocean spray. You cannot buy relevance and attention like that if you're a cranberry juice brand. Feta cheese sold out in Finland for a month because of TikTok. You couldn't buy Little Moon's mochi ice cream balls for 6 weeks in the UK because of TikTok. So sometimes it starts with a piece of content or an ad. Sometimes you just have to create a piece of content and give it to the internet and see where it goes. So I think brands taking that leap of faith, being a bit more playful, being okay with maybe a slightly lower strike rate and saying, actually, we're just going to focus our attention and budgets on creation and content, and not everyone will land, but that's okay, because when one does, it will become a global sensation and we'll be able to sell out a product worldwide. I think that's the real kind of the lightning in a bottle moment that TikTok can provide. So of course you can architect it. Of course there are brands that are producing just incredible content on TikTok. Sometimes you just need to be there when it happens and be ready. And I think more and more across different industries, from fashion to beauty to food and drink, you're seeing that TikTok is really driving a behavioral change. That community-driven commerce is something that we're really excited by. You know, TikTok made me buy it. If you walk into Starbucks or Superdrug or a beauty and fashion store right now, you will see that in your day. That's not something that we're doing. It's brands understanding that culture is driving commerce, and not all of it starts with an ad or a piece of content. It's about living and breathing the culture of your audience.
That makes sense, James. So I guess while it is hard, the prize is so great that it kind of makes sense. And just to summarize what you were saying there, so this philosophy of testing lots of stuff, it's not going to be like you put one video live and it's going to be a smash hit, but testing lots of stuff and looking to find the one which is really going to take off. Yeah,
and you know, I think there are still so many philosophies around, for example, creative to media spend ratios. I'm sure all of you have had this conversation. We don't want to be spending more than 20% of our budget on creative. We need to reserve 80% for media. Maybe. What if you spent the first 80% on creative, and then when one had global attention, you boosted it with media? What if you didn't give any creative or content $1 of media until you knew which one stuck, rather than betting the farm on a single ad or a single asset? The scale of our platform and just internet culture at large is that you can experiment, and people will tell you the consumer is always right. So when you've got a test bed of 1 billion people, create content, give it to people, be playful, embed yourselves in trends. And then when it blows up, be ready. I think it's just a different philosophy. I think freeing yourself from the shackles of protecting certain budgets for certain areas of your marketing division, it impedes creativity. It slows people down, and it means that you won't be agile and nimble when something happens. My favorite example of this is sea shanty. Some of you will be familiar with the story. You know, in Q1 this year, a postman from Scotland, Nathan Evans, started singing old naval songs and sea shanties on TikTok. Now, there was amazing groundswell to this trend. It wasn't on our radar. We picked it up on a Monday. We started connecting Nathan with other creators. We saw some pickup in the press, and we very quickly realized that this was on the brink of becoming a real moment for our brand and for Nathan. He was in the process of signing a record deal on the back of the trend. So on a Tuesday, we made the call that we were in. We didn't have it in our plan. We didn't have budget. We hadn't got any resource mapped against it, but we made the call on that Tuesday that we were going to get behind it. And on Saturday night, it was running on primetime TV as an ad. So we went from trend to TV in 4 days. And that's because we were willing to commission a media plan without a creative. We were willing to bet that speed and cultural relevance was better than perfect creative craft. But most importantly, we wanted our brands to be there when this was blowing up and becoming a moment. And it's so easy to be a spectator in that moment. So many brands have those opportunities or be on the precipice of a cultural moment and they watch it go by. We want to be there when it happens, and it is painful to go through that. I can't tell you how difficult it is to go from trend to TV in 3 or 4 days. But to your point, John, the upsides of doing that builds a long and loved brand. And that was an iconic moment for us. Good Vibes, the Ocean Spray example, was exactly the same in the US. So moving at the speed of culture is just such a superpower for building a brand.
I love that phrase, moving at the speed of culture, because if you get it right, as you say, there is so much value there. I saw, actually, interestingly, Elon Musk, at the same time as you must have been on top of that, he posted some links about sea shanties on his Twitter. And it's just fascinating how, not that he's the benchmark of cultural, like the end point, but just so funny that it gets that far. One of the things which strikes me as I listen to you talking is, so I worked at Google and YouTube in the sort of earlier days of the business. And I remember sort of in the late 2000s, we saw this kind of thing where people could break out and sort of like, all of a sudden out of nowhere become smash hits. Whereas today within YouTube, it's way harder because it's so much busier as a platform. And as I think about, the start of the internet, the same thing happened with Google, where if you were great at SEO in 99, 2000, and 2001, you could set up an entire business. And, still today, Jeff Bezos credits just being really good at that as a lot of why Amazon's growth happened so early. And then if I think about Facebook, the same thing, right? There's not a lot of organic reach on Facebook anymore. And I guess what sort of strikes me is there's this moment in time right now where TikTok offers this sort of outsized ability to have significant impact and to sort of really land brand messaging in an environment which is not super busy. And it just feels like right now this opportunity exists, and hopefully the opportunity continues to exist. What sort of advice / encouragement would you offer to the brands which are slow to sort of step into the space and are sort of nervous to step into the space when, as we say, the prize is just so significant because it's this quieter environment?
I guess it's a question of opportunity cost. What's the downside? So, you're now talking about a platform that has 1 billion users, is becoming a generationally important brand. I'm very biased, but I truly believe that we are one of the most relatable, relevant brands in the world. What's the downside of experimenting on the platform? Actually, what makes TikTok for me so special? I mentioned before that the last sunny corner of the internet, just the positive, inclusive, welcoming, vibrant environment of TikTok is so special. And the community and the platform embraces creativity, including brands. So typically when you're talking about opening a new media channel or kind of taking a brand into a new space, you're talking about risk, cost efficiency, creative and media budgets. TikTok will embrace creativity. So whether you're an SMB trying to build a brand, whether you're a Fortune 500 company, if you embrace the creativity of the platform and our community, you will be successful. That can be native content, it can be creative partnerships, it can be scaling existing brand messaging into different formats, it can be with or without media budget. But what's the downside? You're talking about a community that loves content, loves culture, loves entertainment, and it's an open invitation to be part of it. And, going back to the sea shanty example, you can be a participant or a spectator. We actively encourage participation. And I hope that we preach that as a brand, that, we want to be the best marketer on TikTok. We live and breathe the culture of our platform. And we are a kind of a living, breathing case study on moving at the speed of culture and embracing that community. And there are just unfettered opportunities for brands if you are willing to be playful and really embrace the creative nature of our platform. So I really don't think there are any material barriers to entry. It's just, you know, the advice I would give is be a fan of culture, embrace creativity, embrace the diversity of the audience on TikTok. And it doesn't have to start with you. It can start with another trend, another conversation, and that will present an opportunity to get involved as a brand. And I think that, you know, as a career marketer, I've never felt like I've had that opportunity before. You're always trying to create something from nothing, and TikTok just doesn't require that.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. You touched on the sort of like last sunny corner of the internet, and it's so fascinating how platforms like Facebook have sort of become, you know, there is so much noise there, and quite a lot of it negative, as you say. And in fact, the internet, I think, has generally had a trend in that direction. I guess what's interesting to understand is it, as I think about my TikTok experience, I don't come across a lot of negative energy on the platform. I don't come across a video which leaves me thinking like why did I watch that? That sort of put me in a worse space. And it kind of feels like the TikTok algorithm, by choice or engineering or not, does tend to lean towards more positive energy type content. Just wondering if that sort of is almost intentional, or whether this is just how the platform has sort of evolved.
It's by design and organic. So again, everything starts and finishes with our community. And the best way to encourage positive conversation, creativity, discovery isn't through a brand, it's through the billion people that use the product. It's kind of society at its most successful. You know, as an organization, we take trust and safety very, very seriously. We're incredibly proud of the way that we staff against that area. We have brilliant community guidelines, privacy features, you know, safety features. We invest a great amount of time, energy, and resource in protecting the magic of TikTok. The algorithm rewards creative, positive content that people are positively engaging with, and we stand for it as a brand. You know, when we show up as a brand, we preach inclusion, positivity, connection. So it runs through the veins of the organization in every team, but inevitably is nurtured and grown through the community. And that's a superpower that can't be replicated. You know, 1 billion people are very protective of the experience that they have on TikTok. And I just think that's incredible.
Yeah, that's a great answer. It certainly feels like you're getting it right from my point of view, which is fantastic. You know, as I was sort of reflecting on how hard it is to reach users today, and you touched on this a bit earlier, but if I think about you know, if you ask me what's the last TV ad I remember seeing, it's actually quite a hard question to answer. I don't know if I can even think of one. There's been such a fundamental shift in the way audiences engage with content, and obviously, you know, having spent time at Netflix, so much of the content we watch today doesn't have ads sort of baked into it, and I think it's become harder than ever before to get audiences to pay attention. And I guess you know, just reflecting on that dynamic of, you know, where can you actually get people to pay attention? It's just so challenging today. I guess as I think about the TikTok environment and certainly experiments we sort of run, we feel like there is this absolute attention which you are getting. And I think it makes so much sense, because you literally have to be paying attention if you're watching something on TikTok. It's impossible for TikTok to be playing in a passive way. Just wondered if you had any thoughts on that different way of consuming content, because TikTok is an app and it's on your phone and it's sitting right in front of you. How fundamentally different that is to so many other media types and ways to engage with audiences today.
Yeah, you know, TikTok is a sound-on, immersive, dynamic experience. You know, it's not a kind of passive ambient media experience. So when you're in, you're in. And I think that both for us, for our creators, and for brands, that's an opportunity. And that definitely means that, you know, the experience you have within the product is memorable and has real purpose. To answer your question around how you gain attention in a media climate and in a generation where attention is so hard to get, again, I think it's about showing up in the moments that matter and creating content and messaging that consumers come towards, that you don't have to push. So again, I think programming your own events, content, like the work we did with Ed Sheeran, showing up in an existing conversation that's really meaningful to people, like sports, like gaming, is critically important. Standing for something so that you're relevant to a consumer through the lens of something that they really care about, like inclusion or the environment, or the creative economy. You know, there aren't always silver bullets, but, you know, I think being always on and truly committed to winning attention by showing up in those moments that matter is inevitably the way to do it, but really embracing creativity and content, and really looking to embed yourselves in culture. I think every brand has a way of inserting itself into culture. Culture means many things to many people, but you know, I even think about, I started my career at a company called Reckitt Benckiser that's now called Reckitt. One of the most successful hashtag challenges of last year was the Wipe It Down challenge from Dettol. It had over 1 billion hashtag posts, like 1 billion for a wet wipe. And there are so many ways that if you're willing to embrace the culture of the internet and creativity, that you can insert yourselves as a brand into it. But you have to live and breathe the life of your consumers and truly understand what's important to them. And again, it all comes back to pulling people towards you, not trying to insert yourselves where you're not necessarily wanted.
James, that's such a great sort of overview of TikTok, and I think it just makes so much sense from the outside. And thanks so much for sharing such an in-depth thinking. One of the other things I'd love to touch on in our time today is just your journey and your experience of different companies and what you've learned along the way. And you touched on culture there. And if I was to think about the most intentional cultural organizations in the world, I think two of them would definitely be Netflix and Google. Netflix's culture document, obviously world famous, and I think just such a fascinating thing to spend some time reading if anyone on the call hasn't done so. Google, obviously renowned for having an incredible culture to work within, and you know, often voted the best place to work in the world. Both very intentional organizations about culture. You know, talking about Reckitt's obviously such a different type of organization once again, and then, you know, TikTok, such an interesting environment, Chinese-led company. I'd be fascinated to understand. You know, it almost feels like if you were going to go out and do a PhD on the cultures of organizations and how they impact the product and the output and what's it like to work there. Three of the companies you'd probably put in there would be those three. And I just wondered if you could talk a bit about your experience working in those companies, and just where you felt the cultures were strong and different, and what was great about those differences.
Yeah, I mean, I feel very, very fortunate to be able to experience all of these organizations when they were on the ascendancy, and playing such an important role in kind of brand advertising and culture overall. The first thing I always say, you know, within our team and more broadly, is culture eats strategy for breakfast. And you have to deeply link culture to the purpose of the business. So if you think about the way that each of those organizations has designed its people philosophy, its culture, it's deeply linked to the mission of the business. TikTok's mission is to inspire creativity and bring joy. That starts from within. So we have to treat the creativity of the marketing team with patronage. We need to indulge creativity. We need to facilitate fun. We need to bring joy to the experience of working at TikTok. And I've never worked somewhere that is so playful and dynamic and creative. And the experience that you feel when you open the app, I feel when I walk into the four walls of the office, and you cannot separate the two because eventually people smell a rat. So, you know, we have to be the best version of our product culture within the organization. Google is about curiosity and connecting the world and entrepreneurialism. And that's the role that the company plays in people's lives, that quest for information, that connection. And it feels the same when you walk into the four walls, as you know, that that the data-driven curiosity, entrepreneurship in that organization is incredible. And Netflix has reshaped the global entertainment industry, and they are fans of entertainment. You feel that when you talk to them on social, you feel it in a campaign, you feel it when people are talking about one of the 1,000 shows that launches every year. You simply cannot delineate the culture of an organization from its mission and the role that it plays in people's lives. And I think when that breaks is typically when you see brands lose a bit of relevance. So, I think there are multiple high-performing cultures, but the one thing I feel very strongly about is that you have to believe in it as an individual, because cultures should be divisive. I think it's perfectly acceptable for culture to be brilliant for 50% of the world's talent and not for the other 50%, because that's how cultures and ways of working and strategies are born. And I think you have to live and breathe the mission of the business through the culture and ways of working, because it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy and leads to high growth, high performance. So you're right, they are different. They're all special. They're all very unique and very pronounced cultures, but they are all deeply rooted in the mission of the business. And they are all, by choice, a little bit polarizing and unique to make sure that from a talent acquisition perspective, you're bringing in people into the organization that will thrive.
That makes so much sense. And I guess Netflix is the one who publicly states that in their culture document, that Netflix isn't for everyone. It's so interesting listening to the mission of TikTok, inspire creativity and bring joy, and just, sample of one. If I think about how it's inspired creativity in my life, it really has in so many different ways. My daughter's 7 and she's so often, she loves to draw and do arts and crafts. And it's just incredible once you get into the cycle of seeing that kind of content and obviously watching it. And I can think of probably 5 projects we've done at home. And obviously when you've got a 7-year-old, you're constantly looking for projects to sort of connect and keep your children entertained. And I have to say that sort of piece of inspiring creativity is just being so well executed. And I can just see, as you get this, just so much new different content. What I love about that as well is it's not sort of like one type of content, one type of creativity. Everyone in the world has their own sort of type of creativity. And it's just fascinating to see how diverse it is. And it goes back to that sort of like everyone's going to have their 1 minute of fame or whatever the quote was. And it feels like, it is exactly like that really short little window of incredible inspiration. So yeah, just great to see the mission of the business really working as well as it is. Two things before I hand over to Peggy, and Peggy's going to source some questions from the audience and Connor as well. But before I hand over to Peggy, just sort of talking more about culture, 2 of the pieces there are vision and leadership. And I wondered if there was anything around the TikTok vision you'd be happy to share. And obviously that sort of idea of inspiring creativity and bringing joy is happening today. I just wonder what the vision is for the future. I would assume that the inspiring creativity and bringing the joy will continue, but just wondering what else is in there.
It will. I think that will always be the underlying philosophy of the organization. Maybe just to touch on something I referenced earlier. No organization has really ever had a period of hypergrowth like TikTok. Reaching 1 billion users in its own right is extraordinary. Reaching 1 billion users in 3 years is unprecedented. So we're in a fascinating position where we're a mass product, but a disruptor brand. And we effectively need our brands to catch up to the incredible growth of our organization. And we've moved very quickly from startup to scale up to leader. And brand leaders have to define themselves in the lives of consumers, not the eyes of consumers, the role that they play in people's lives. And really what makes TikTok so special is it is shaping the culture of entertainment. It is community culture driven entertainment. First and foremost, people come to TikTok to escape, to discover, to be entertained. So, we really believe there's an opportunity to represent the next generation of creativity, storytelling, and entertainment. And I think you'll see us talk more and more about that in our advertising, you'll see us continue to show up in those major sports, music, entertainment moments. You'll continue to see brands, organizations produce just incredible content on the platform. But most importantly, you'll see us continue to really invest in our creator community. The hundreds of millions of people that are storytellers, that entertain, that inspire creativity and learning. And we really want to continue giving them a megaphone, because they are the DNA of this organization, and they will help us in our next chapter of growth. But building that identity as a brand, really kind of that consistent messaging and acting like we have a billion users, it is something that you'll see more and more from us. And we're super excited about it, because we've still got so many things to do, areas to improve, a lot of great work to do within the marketing team. But what a foundation to have 3 years into our journey.
Wow. It almost feels backwards. I think a lot of organizations, you come up with the idea, you then, try and get the idea to work, and you try and scale a revenue business at the same time. That's so fascinating. I was looking at TikTok's revenue for 2020 being $2 billion, YouTube's revenue for this last quarter being $7 billion. So you've got sort of a 10 times shift in more than 10 times, about 15 times more revenue, and yet the time on the app, certainly TikTok has overtaken. And I can only imagine that this sort of like job of catching up to the world's attention is a really challenging thing to be inside of. So last question, James, if you don't mind, before I hand over to Peggy, is just, we have obviously lots of students here. We have multiple different universities who've also joined and dialed in, and of course the team from the London Business School. If you were sort of starting tomorrow, what sort of advice would you give to students if you're starting your career tomorrow? With such a different world, ever-changing world, where would you make your own first steps?
Yes, I mean, it's such a, sometimes I don't even know if I've been intentional with the choices that I've made over the years. But the one thing that's always been true for me is, with every decision I make, to get closer to something that I love, because that's inevitably the kind of the key ingredient to a successful career. We haven't spoken about this before, John, but I almost became a lawyer. Ironically, being a career marketer and just absolutely loving creativity. When I left university, I had a training contract. I wanted to work in corporate litigation. And about 3 months before making that decision, I effectively panicked and took a job, I think 18% of the salary, to work in marketing. And that's 18, by the way, not 80. Because I knew it's what I loved. I love creativity. I love content. I love the culture of the internet. And I started with a creative marketing job in consumer goods. I knew I wanted to be in tech. I knew that entertainment was my passion. And then I knew that culture-driven entertainment was inevitably where I wanted to be. So with every decision I've made, both in changing companies, with moving around the world, it was always based on just getting that little bit closer to something that I love, so that I could spend my 12 hours a day kind of passionately doing my work. And hopefully when you hear me talk about TikTok, it comes across that I absolutely love my job. And I feel very, very creatively inspired by how I spend my day. So, careers ebb and flow. Sometimes you'll have 5 years of hyper growth. Sometimes it will be a bit slower. You don't feel it when it's slower if you're doing something that you love. So it's a very simple piece of advice, but being intentional with every decision to get closer to what you really love will give you a long and healthy career, would be my advice.
That is such great advice, James. And thank you for all of your brilliant answers to these questions. Just so interesting to learn, and thank you for your time. Should I hand back to you, Peggy? Do you have a question for James?
Yeah, thank you so much, James and John. I will pick up a question from Gabby. So Gabby asked a quick question about TikTok creative content during COVID times. So which was the TikTok brand creative strategy during the pandemic, and how is now?
Good question. The strategy was broadly the same. We wanted to create entertaining content that reflected culture and really insert our brand into the lives of our consumers. The creative production itself is far more challenging. Of course, for any of you that have previously worked in advertising, you know that a lot of the production, the development of creative ideas happens in person, on set, with camera crews. For over a year, we made all of our TV ads and creative through remote shoots, directing people over Zoom, not being able to travel. That was incredibly challenging, and something that, you know, we may never have to go through again. So the production side of things was a particular challenge. But really, the evolution of our advertising reflects culture. You know, a lot of the work that we were doing in the summer of 2019 was a pick-me-up, just helping people to smile, feel connected, feel that there was hope coming. At the beginning of the year, it was forward-facing and helping people to feel excited about the next chapter of the world coming offline. And now we want to insert ourselves in those moments that feel normal again, like sports and concerts and kind of in real life gatherings. So our brand, our storytelling will always reflect the kind of culture of our audiences and their lives. The production is getting much easier, and I am pretty happy that we're business as usual again, because it was a real challenge.
I have a question coming from, apologies if I mispronounce your name, Kezin and Sung Woo at LSE. I think it's very top of mind for many students here. Just looking to get any insight you could potentially give us around what skills a young marketer should be looking to focus on developing for a career in a more creative tech organization that, as you've said, is looking to evolve alongside culture like TikTok.
Great question. I think we are in the era of the specialist. So if I think about my own career path, I started as a generalist, became a specialist for 10 years, and I'm now a generalist again. I think the cheat code for very, very fast career growth is to be very good at one thing, whether that's social and publishing or creative and design or research and measurements or paid media. Find the specialism that every marketing organization needs and be the first person that someone needs to get in the room on a project. You know, that's always how I think about utility for me and my team is, does someone say, I need James in this room right now? And the more specialized you are with a skill, the more likely that is to happen. Inevitably, as you kind of progress through your career, you'll become more and more generalist. The key then is to have an appreciation and understanding for everything that your team does, but you'll never be as good at it as them. You know, I'm not a creative, I'm not a media specialist, I'm not a researcher, but I understand enough of all of those areas to be able to guide a team. But I think we are in the era of specialists. So my advice in the first 2 to 3 years would be expose yourself to as many of those disciplines as possible. It's impossible for you to say at 25 that I'm going to be a career researcher or I am a creative or I'm a brilliant social publisher, because you haven't done it. So find opportunities. You know, Google is absolutely brilliant at this, as John knows, like going on rotation, having the opportunity to do 4 6-month blocks of different disciplines to gain exposure to different parts of the business and different centers of excellence. You know, think about them as 4 6-month job interviews. How can you give yourself a taste of all of the disciplines of marketing so that you can chart a path to really specialize in the growth years of your career? Because I do think that that's increasingly important.
Such a great answer, James. Thank you so much. I have one last question because we have 3 minutes left of your time. And my question is about leadership. So you have a team of 75 people, and I can imagine that that's a really significant leadership challenge with so much happening so fast in such a creative organization. Just wondered if you could talk a bit about your philosophy on leadership, what you've learned over the course of your career from a leadership point of view.
Yeah, great question. Every leader needs to have first principles, kind of 3 or 4 immovable values that are kind of real guideposts. I'm a huge believer in context being more important than control. So transparency of information, robust strategy, really grounding the entire team in the why so that everyone knows how they contribute to the success of the organization. That will get you through difficult times, long days, challenging projects, you need to understand the why. The second is to really trust people to do the job that you hired them to do. Don't hire someone that wants creative freedom and autonomy and put them in a box. You need to allow the kind of space for people in your team to flourish. Identity discipline is really, really important. What you will find as you all grow teams and grow your careers is that when you are hiring in a small team of 5 people, you hire generalists. You need people that can do a little bit of everything to keep the lights on and keep you moving. When you get to 75 people, 150 people, you need specialists and you need real clarity in roles and responsibilities. And that identity discipline is really important to scale. So be very intentional of not just hiring 50 generalists. Make sure that even before the organization is scaled, that you are building centers of excellence. You're being really precise with roles and responsibilities. You're avoiding duplication because it's really painful to unwind it. And you need to do that early on. And be human. We all have a life outside of work. You need to be the same person in it as outside it because the line is increasingly blurred. And you give too much of your life to a job to have to put on a face every morning. So being human, approachable, kind goes a long, long way, and is inevitably the kind of supercharger on all of those first principles. Sounds easy and can be hard, but will serve you well in the long run.
Oh, such a great answer, James. I'm so happy I asked that final question. James, just a huge thank you from everyone here today. We've had, I think at the most, we had 188 people who joined us. And I just want to say a massive thank you to you. I personally feel a lot smarter because of the time. I'm so excited about the platform you represent and excited to continue to execute in there. Just a huge thank you for your time. And thank you to everyone else who joined us.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.